George Washington, silent but decisive.
But before we start to get into the video, please support us by like, share, and subscribe to this channel so that we can provide new insights and knowledge about world history. Thank you.
In the sweltering summer of 1787, delegates from 12 of the 13 American states gathered in Philadelphia to reshape the fledgling nation's government. The result of that convention, held behind tightly closed doors in Independence Hall, would become the United States Constitution. Among the many issues debated and resolved, one stood paramount: the creation of a new executive office, the presidency. Central to this transformation was a figure who spoke little, yet whose presence commanded respect, and whose actions set the tone for a new republic: George Washington. The Philadelphia Convention, also known as the Constitutional Convention, was initially convened to revise the Articles of Confederation. However, it soon became clear to most delegates that a complete overhaul of the system was necessary. The Articles had left the national government weak, particularly in its inability to enforce laws, raise revenue effectively, or unify the states under a cohesive policy framework. The challenge was to devise a system that balanced authority and liberty, federal and state power, and prevented tyranny without slipping into anarchy. One of the thorniest questions was how to structure the executive branch. Memories of British monarchical rule were still raw, and many delegates feared creating a powerful central authority that could devolve into despotism. Yet they also recognized the inefficiencies and chaos bred by the weak executive under the Articles. The answer would come in the form of a singular executive, a president, but the acceptance of this idea hinged heavily on one man: George Washington. Washington's presence at the convention was both symbolic and strategic. As the hero of the Revolutionary War and a figure of unimpeachable integrity, Washington was unanimously elected to preside over the proceedings. While he rarely spoke during debates, his mere attendance lent credibility to the convention and calmed fears about the potential for abuse of executive power. Delegates trusted that if Washington could accept and embody the role of president, it would not be one of ambition or tyranny, but of duty and republican virtue. The debate over the presidency was intense. Delegates wrestled with questions about term length, method of election, powers, and checks. The final result was a uniquely American synthesis: a president who would be independently elected, albeit through an electoral college, serve a 4-year term with the possibility of re-election, and wield considerable powers, including command of the military, veto authority, and the ability to negotiate treaties, all tempered by a system of checks and balances. Yet this system, robust on paper, still required proof in practice. That proof would be George Washington himself. When Washington was unanimously elected as the first president in 1789, the Constitution had barely begun to take root. Washington was acutely aware that every action he took would set precedent. His decisions would shape not only how the presidency functioned, but how future Americans viewed the office. True to his nature, Washington approached the role with humility, restraint, and a deep sense of responsibility. Washington's leadership style as president was marked by deliberation and prudence. He surrounded himself with capable advisors, including Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Henry Knox, and Edmund Randolph, and encouraged open debate within his cabinet. While he often listened more than he spoke, when he made a decision, it carried decisive weight. He resisted the temptation to overstep his bounds, thereby reinforcing the limits of executive power, even as he demonstrated its effectiveness. One of his most important contributions was his handling of the presidency's symbolic and ceremonial aspects. Conscious of the danger of appearing monarchical, Washington avoided regal titles, insisting simply on being called Mr. President. He balanced the need for public dignity in the office with Republican simplicity, establishing a model for presidential conduct that endured for generations. Washington also set vital precedents in foreign policy and domestic authority. His decision to issue the Neutrality Proclamation in 1793, amidst the war between Britain and revolutionary France, established the principle that the executive had the power to set foreign policy, a move criticized by some, but upheld by history. His suppression of the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794 demonstrated that the federal government could and would enforce its laws, but he did so with care to minimize violence and ensure due process. Perhaps Washington's most significant act as president, however, was his voluntary departure from power. By choosing not to seek a third term, he established the norm of peaceful, voluntary transfer of executive authority, a norm later enshrined in the 22nd Amendment. In his farewell address, he warned against the dangers of factionalism, foreign entanglements, and excessive partisanship, offering a vision of civic virtue and national unity that remains relevant. In addition to his structural and symbolic contributions, Washington's understanding of the presidency extended to its role in unifying a diverse and often divided population. He made deliberate efforts to tour various regions of the country, visiting towns and meeting citizens to reinforce the idea of a single American identity. These journeys helped knit the fabric of the new nation, reinforcing a sense of national belonging that transcended local allegiances. Moreover, Washington's financial policies, heavily influenced by Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, but endorsed and supported by the president, helped stabilize the fledgling economy. The establishment of a national bank, assumption of state debts, and the creation of a standardized currency were controversial, yet pivotal in securing the economic foundations of the United States. Washington's willingness to back these measures, even when politically risky, underscored his commitment to practical governance over ideological purity. George Washington's role in shaping the American presidency cannot be overstated. He was the linchpin between theory and practice, between constitution and country. At the Philadelphia Convention, his silent watchfulness gave the delegates the confidence to create an executive office imbued with substantial authority. As president, his measured decisiveness gave the nation a working model of that office in action. Washington never sought power for its own sake. He accepted leadership out of a sense of duty, and it was precisely this self-restraint, this silence in speech, but decisiveness in action, that made him the ideal first president of the United States. His legacy lies not only in the wars he won or the positions he held, but in the integrity with which he held them. In a time of uncertainty, George Washington became the embodiment of Republican leadership, a silent but decisive force in the birth of a nation. Today, as Americans continue to navigate the complexities of executive power and democratic governance, the example set by Washington remains a touchstone. His conduct reminds us that the strength of a political system lies not only in its written rules, but in the character of those who interpret and implement them. In silence, George Washington shaped the presidency. In action, he defined it.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe if you like videos like this. Thank you.